It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Shorman, and this is the Forum on Eagle Community Television. It's good to have you watching along. We have a special edition. You can see we're in a different room than typical. We have in the background here, this is the office of the Provost at Fort Hays State University. We have a new Provost starting in June of this year, Dr. Glynn. And Dr. Glynn, good to have you here.
Thank you.
I guess it's good to have me here in your office this
Yes.
time. Yeah, it's good to have you here at Fort Hays State University because I know you've been here for a couple of months. It's a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about you. And looking around the office, you have some fun technology here, and I think that's going to be one of the things you bring to Fort Hays State. Question, first off, where did you grow up?
Grew up in Dublin, Ireland, and moved to the States when I was 23 to do my doctorate in neuroscience.
Well, and taking a look at your resume and kind of your background, you have a unique background from that standpoint, but not a lot of people in Western Kansas grew up in Dublin, Ireland. What's it like to grow up there?
Well, the education system's quite different.
How?
In that it's very, very academic. There's very little extracurricular activities, inter-college or inter-high school sports. At least there wasn't when I was growing up. So it was very serious, very competitive. Only about a third of the students who wanted to go to college got in, so there was a lot of competition academically to get into college. So high school ended up being very, very academically focused.
And I know you still have family over there. What does your family do?
So my father started out with grocery stores, had a small chain of little corner convenience stores, you'd call them here in the United States. My mother was a tailor, actually, but in Ireland, in her day, as soon as you got married, you had to stop working because there just weren't enough jobs for everybody. So they had this sort of unwritten rule that married women could not work.
Well, when you have a system like that, you make the choice to come to the United States. How hard was that to leave your family?
It was, when you're coming to a country to be involved in an educational program, you have a purpose. You're going to an institution, you're getting a lot of support, there's a lot of other students your own age. It's not the same as immigrating as if you were just coming over to look for work. So, and it's an exciting time. You know you're going to learn the things that you want to learn. So it was difficult leaving my family, but at the same time it was very exciting coming here. So they sort of played off one another.
And we were joking around before the program about, you have a PhD in neuroscience. Am I saying this right?
You are?
And whether you could do brain surgery on, because there's people that say I probably need that. But what happens with a neuroscience degree and having a PhD? What does that allow you to do, and what has that sort of led you into?
Okay. So one of the options is obviously to go into higher education and teach. In my case, I taught in pharmacy schools for many years, teaching pharmacists about the drugs that affect the human brain and how to treat disorders of the brain. But you can go into pure research about how the brain works, memory disorders, movement disorders, psychiatric disorders, schizophrenia, depression. There's all those areas that we still know so little about, that a lot of neuroscientists, it's a huge, huge field that has grown even since I arrived in the United States. The annual conference that I went to, which was sort of a signal of the number of people involved back in the 80s, was about 8,000. Now there's 50,000 people that attend the annual neuroscience conference. So there's a lot of people in this
Do you
field.
still stay engaged with some of that?
No, I don't have time. I'm focused on leadership and management and how educational systems work and making essentially a big corporation, which a university is, work effectively.
Well, when you look at doing that, you talk about how the brain works, but you're right, that transition into what you've done at other universities really plays into that because it's a part of how you work, how people work together.
Right.
You made some big inroads in the pharmacy side of working on some online technical advances. What's in that story? What about that?
So neuroscience research involves a lot of technology. You're measuring electrical activity in the brain, measuring levels of chemicals in the brain. So I was a very technologically competent person when I started taking on my role as a teacher, as a faculty member. So it was a natural inclination to start seeing how technology could help people learn. And my first pharmacy school at Ferris State in Michigan, I had one of the first websites, and I was one of the first people using presentation technology and computers in the classroom. But at Creighton, which was the second position that I was at in pharmacy school, I sort of went from there and said, well, how can we use technology to teach more effectively, but also to improve access? And we ended up being the first College of Pharmacy to go fully online in the world. So you could get your Doctor of Pharmacy degree online, and we were the first to do that.
How much has that changed even from then? Because I know initially there was some of that, there was a little clunky, but right. You got it done.
Yeah.
To now the seamless ways to do that
right.
is interesting.
Basically then we were looking at putting content on web pages. There was very little, the people didn't have the bandwidth to look at videos a lot. Now, videos dominate even traditional websites for institutions. And it's interesting though, because video is not necessarily the best way to learn. We've done a lot of research into how people learn effectively, called cognitive neuroscience. And watching a lecture, which is the traditional method by which content is delivered in most universities, is actually one of the least effective ways of teaching. Watching a videotape lecture is even worse. So you have to be very careful when, that you don't get enthralled by the technology, pulled in by that, and start using stuff that really doesn't help people learn. You have to think more about how people learn effectively, how they build, scaffold, connect ideas, and so on, rather than letting the technology drive you. It's very easy to have the tail wag the dog.
Well, let's talk, because this could be a whole nother program or two when you talk about how you go into that, because it ties in so well to what Fort Hays State has been doing, and even maybe the next generation of that. But when you talk about learning, today's student learns differently than maybe the way I learn, in a sense of all of the video that's out there, all of the electronics that's out there, all those different things. How do you combine the basics, like you say, the good learning techniques, with those that are out there today, whether they be the Facebook type of things or those type of deals?
So there's a couple of basic elements to good learning, and I've been involved in developing faculty skills for teaching for a long, long time. I even had my own TV show about that. And in interviewing hundreds of faculty, what it comes down to, in essence, is one thing: the ability of a faculty member to stimulate interest in the student in the topic that you're trying to get them to learn. Because if a student is interested, they'll actually go and learn it on their own. The second thing is the amount of time that a student spends engaged on the material. Just like any job, the harder you work at it, the more you get out of it. The same is true of learning. The more time you spend engaged in trying to learn the material, the more you'll learn. The trick is to get the students engaged effectively in ways that really make a difference. So again, one of the things that's very commonly done by students is they'll read a textbook and they'll highlight it. And they think, wonderful, I finished this chapter. It's all nice, bright, light colors all over the place. I know that stuff.
Little tabs too. You can add tabs if you really want to be good. Yeah.
But in fact, the research shows that that's the least effective way for students to learn. So finding ways, for example, connecting ideas diagrammatically, called concept mapping. I have one idea here, it leads to this idea, which leads to the next idea. That models how the human brain actually remembers and connects ideas. And if I say a word like car to you, you may say Toyota, and I'd say Chevrolet. But that's my map, my connection with ideas is different than yours. The trick is to connect the new information into my map in a way that makes sense, and you'll connect it into yours, but I got to provide the tools to help you do that. When I do that, you'll learn more effectively.
One of the things I find is that, and you and I are sitting here talking, we have the interpersonal connection of not only before the program, but we talk and we do this. That seems a lot harder when you're watching somebody here. Well, how do you make that connection with that person to get that kind of excitement in there, to get that kind of charisma that gets a student excited?
So, to me, distance is not a matter of how many feet yards, miles, or the European meters and kilometers you are away. A student who's sitting in the back of the classroom reading a newspaper or a website on their computer is more distant than a student 2,000 miles away who's actually engaged in the material and paying attention. So distance to me is not what's critical, it's how actively you're engaging the students. And there are a lot of very effective ways that we can do that online, particularly through online discussions. We find that online discussions, where you post ideas and people respond to them in a thread, the quality of those postings is actually much higher, and more students engage in that online than they do in the classroom. Because in the classroom, quite often they're intimidated. They don't have time to think and prepare their ideas and craft them as they write them. And so they're spontaneously speaking. They may get it wrong. They feel embarrassed. They're exposing their ignorance, which I think is actually a very important thing to do. But online, they feel a lot more secure about doing that, and they have time to think about what they're saying and maybe even look some things up as they're posing questions. So you can actually get richer engagement, more intimate engagement. In fact, many faculty say they know their online students better than they know their classroom students.
Because of that connection back and forth.
Because of that lack of intimidation.
Well, you've put together a really unique resume. Which one of your jobs has really prepared you for this job as provost the best?
Ooh, that's a tough question. They classically say nowadays that when in higher education, we're preparing students for jobs that don't even exist today. Now, that's how quickly things are evolving. And people change jobs on average 5 to 6 times in quite significant ways. And I think I've done that from being an instructor and a researcher to leading different components of the university in terms of faculty development, assessment. It all comes down to how well you think and plan and how well you can communicate and work with people. Those soft skills, an ability to interact, influence, but also to think logically and I think basically as a scientist, the idea of using information to support decision making is probably the one that's most prepared me for a managerial role.
I know most people don't say, as they graduate from high school or whatever, say, I want to be a provost somewhere.
Most people don't even know what a provost is.
Well, you said manager, and that's really what the case is here for being able to manage what is a significant, if not big corporation in Kansas.
Right.
And that's a role that you play there. What areas of the university are you going to start focusing on?
So I actually have 2 titles. I'm provost and vice president for academic affairs. And the provost part is where all the faculty, the chairs, the deans, they all report to me as the chief academic officer. And I have both a leadership role and a role as a voice for those. Because the faculty are the engine of the university. They're the people who do the teaching, the work with the students essentially to produce the graduates. And it's very easy for the administration sometimes to lose sight of that, to think about other operational areas too much. And so part of my job is to make sure that the president and the cabinet all think effectively about really the outcome, our students. On the other side, I have the vice president for academic affairs, which is the sort of the operational part, the quality improvement, the faculty development, how our programs are put together and structured and so on. My passion is looking at effective ways to restructure higher education. It's not working as well as it could. There are ways of rethinking the way we have it all organized that I think would make a lot more students a lot more successful. Our graduation rates from when only about 2/3 of students who enter college nationally actually graduate. So we're losing 1/3 of our students. And that's not good enough. Not in today's age where we need more and more well-educated people if we're going to maintain our quality of life in this competitive world. So restructuring to help those students be successful, to help them get through, to see the bigger picture, to think more about what I would call deep learning, learning for a lifetime to be effective rather than learning to get through the next exam.
Well, it's exciting because one of the things you talked about going from one idea to kind of the next, it really leads into what we're going to take a break and come back and talk about kind of what are those ideas that you want to put in place as you start really your tenure here of leading the academic side of our university and doing that. Our guest is Dr. Glynn Graham, or Graham Glynn, and he is the provost here at Fort Hays State University. Back with more after this.
It's a beautiful day in our super high-speed internet great customer service neighborhood. Like you, this is where we live. In fact, our company is employee-owned, so it's our goal to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community by delivering faster, more reliable internet, clearer, more feature-laden phone service, quality TV channels, all with the level of customer service you'd expect from people who are your neighbors. Eagle Communications. Our community connected.
Welcome back to the second half of our forum program here on Eagle Community Television. Our program is brought to you by Hays Med. If you have any ideas, questions, comments, suggestions for programs like this one, I'd like to hear from you. You can find me at gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. You can also go online at Facebook under the forum, the ECTV forum. Type that into the search bar and you can connect with me there as well. Again, our guest is Dr. Graham Glynn. He's the new provost, Fort Hays State University. We've talked about education and some of the, I guess, challenges out there to improve and keep up with changing technology. You made two comments. One talked about how we're preparing students for jobs that aren't here yet. And the second part of it is then how do we put that process into work? What are your goals as you start your tenure here as really the lead academic advisor, leader, manager of this university? What are your goals to put in place as you get started?
So Fort Hays, I took this job here at Fort Hays for a reason. It's an amazingly innovative entrepreneurial institution. Perhaps because of its location, its isolation, it has had to be that way to thrive the way it has. And I think that I can build on the shoulders of the people who have gone before me and really develop a worldwide reputation, do some very innovative things here in terms of how we approach the whole process of education that will make Fort Hays known throughout the world and a leader in innovative approaches to education.
Well, that's interesting because when you looked at a job, a lot of times if you're looking for an opportunity somewhere and people will look at the map and one, they say Kansas, don't want to go there. And then you look at the map of Kansas saying, Hays, Kansas, that's like in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. What was the toggle point there? Was it the history of the university?
It was the whole sense of innovation. That's what made the difference. So when you're looking for a position like a provost, it's a national search. There are only a handful, maybe 20 jobs annually, maybe a little bit more, that come available. And you take a look at them and the location is secondary. The institution and what it's doing is what you look at first. Then, because basically the chances of being able to say, well, I'd like to live in New England, I'm going to go find a job as a provost there. The chances of you doing that are pretty slim. So if you want this type of position, you basically have to say, I'll choose it based on the institution and I'll go wherever the job takes me. So at this point, I've lived in 6 different states and moved every six or 8 years or so to get where I am today.
Fort Hays State, many people come in and they realize, wow, there is such a great online program. And that's one of those things, if you build on that,
Right.
it goes from great to beyond
huge.
that and to huge. And right now, thousands of students are involved. How will you grow that to the next level and actually making it huge instead of just great?
Okay. So I think the biggest challenge of this institution is not that it's not doing great things, it's that not enough people know it's doing great things. We're like, we're hiding our light under a bushel. We haven't blown our horn loudly enough. We are like the second least expensive state university in the United States and providing what I would consider a private college experience. Tremendous quality, tremendous small classrooms. Our classrooms on average are less than 30. At most state institutions, you're in classrooms that have 300, 400, 500, 600. Even when I was at Penn State, we had a classroom that had 1,100 students sitting in the classroom, all together in one huge room. So that the connection that our faculty have with our students, a large proportion of our faculty are full-time faculty. They live here in Hayes, they work full-time. Their whole job, their whole mission and focus is on higher education. Many institutions now are going to a lot more part-time faculty, or faculty who are, have a day job and then are teaching part-time to either for the passion or to make ends meet and earn some extra money. Again, part of our strength is our isolation. Being in a small town, the only way we can bring faculty here is as full-time faculty. So we have a lot of strengths. We need to let people know about what we're doing. We are competitive like you wouldn't believe in both the national and international market. So, and the other thing too is that if you look at this campus, we have beautiful old buildings that have all been gutted and modernized inside. So ultra-modern facilities. We have facilities for, we have 5,000 students on campus, and it's more like a 10,000 student institution. And we've achieved that, or my predecessors have achieved that, essentially by exporting education. Just like any industry, if you can export and bring the return back to your shareholders, in our case, our shareholders are our students
here.
Right? We're exporting education throughout the world, and we're bringing the profits of that back to support a phenomenal institution that serves Kansas and the United States. And we would not be able to do that if we were not being innovative and entrepreneurial.
Well, we're running out of time. We could talk for a long time. I want to look, China is a big online program that you hear
Actually,
a lot
it's a
about.
big face-to-face for us.
And in both ways. But what other countries are you looking at? Because we talked earlier about being worldwide.
Yep.
There's a lot of other potentially really good areas to look at.
So we are exploring partnerships in multiple countries: Thailand, Turkey, South America, Mexico, all different areas around the world. We're also looking, believe it or not, to become more of a Hispanic serving institution within the United States. The Hispanic population in Kansas is quite significant. And when you think about, that's a portion of the population that if it doesn't get well educated, it's going to be the breadwinners, the people who are, by 2025, the white population is expected within the United States to be in a minority. We need to make sure that our current minority populations are well educated so that, when they're leading industry, when they're generating the revenue and the tax dollars that have made this country great, that continues to happen. So we have to take a very balanced approach to the source of our students and focusing on that diversity within our population.
Dr. Glynn, it's good to have you on the program. As somebody out there is watching, they want to find out more about the university. You talk about selling point, because a lot of times the selling point are those people that are not only alumni, but people that care about Fort Hays State University. How do they get more engaged? How do they contact you? What's the best way to say, hey, I heard Dr. Glynn the other night, and he was talking about the way this campus can grow because of exporting. How do they become engaged and find out more about that?
The simplest thing is just to go to our website, www.fhsu.edu. I'd be happy to take emails. My email address is geglynn@fhsu.edu. And we have organizations like our Alumni Affairs organization that its whole purpose is to remain connected with the alumni, and not just in terms of informing them, but in them informing us about how successful they were in their careers, how we can modify our degree programs so that the next generation of graduates are even more successful. So that connection out with our alumni is very important, and our alumni organization maintains that.
You and I had an interesting conversation about how the world is getting smaller. Fort Hays State can play a big role in that as well, and I think you touched on that as you take a look at going around the world inside this area here of art, but really taking advantage of not only the technology, but the ability of this university to grow, and that's exciting to hear. It's good to have you on our program today.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Dr. Glynn has been our guest. He is the provost at Fort Hays State University. New as of June 1st, invite you to go out, check out the website. Also, if you see him running around campus, be sure and say hello. Welcome to our community. This is The Forum on Eagle Community Television. I'm Gary Shorman. The Forum is brought to you by Hayes Med and by Eagle Communications, our community connected.
Hayes Med is your first and best choice for healthcare. They're the only facility providing tertiary level services in this region. With more than 70 physicians and 26 specialties ranging from heart, orthopedic, spine care, cancer, obstetrics and gynecology, wound care, rehabilitation and surgery, including the Da Vinci robotic surgery, Hayes Med is your comprehensive health provider for people throughout Western Kansas. Hayes Med, helping people be healthy.